Welcome to Becoming is Messy, where we dive deep into the journey of survival, transformation, and everything in between. I'm your host, Megan Dawson, here to share the honest, unfiltered stories behind my own process of becoming. Life isn't a pretty and perfect straight line, and neither is becoming the person we're meant to be. Here, we embrace the ups, the downs, all the beautiful, chaotic, messy moments that shape who we are. Whether you're in the thick of change or reflecting on past transformations, this space is for real conversations about what it means to grow, stumble, and rise again. So get comfy, settle in, and let's get messy. Today's episode is extra special. It's our very first guest episode for the show. It's a bit of an embodiment of the Becoming is Messy philosophy. My first dive in the interview format is a little clunky. I'm certainly rolling with the progress over perfection mantra. But what's most special about this episode, I got to sit down with the person who knows my messy, beautiful, ever-evolving story better than anyone, my husband, Kelly Griego. While my primary question for Kelly was what it's like to be a life partner to someone with chronic trauma background, our conversation ended up twisting and turning into other aspects of our union. From our unconventional first date, spoiler, we skipped the small talk and went straight for the deep stuff, to building a life filled with love, growth, and our blended family, the Hometeam. We're pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to support and challenge each other through every season. It felt good to take this time and truly listen to Kelly's perspective on our partnership. He's one of the strongest, kindest, and most determined people I know. A dedicated endurance athlete, a guide for persons with disabilities, an ambassador for Lululemon, a servant-hearted leader, an incredible father, and my biggest champion. After a lifetime of crappy men, I ended up with one incredible human as my ride or die on this wild journey of life. In this episode, we get real about love, partnership, co-parenting, career shifts, and what it means to keep choosing each other through all of life's ups and downs. This is Messily Ever After. Hi, baby. Welcome to Becoming is Messy. I'm so excited to have you as our first guest.
I'm excited to be here and interested.
Awesome. We're going to have fun today. Let's jump into the first question to get us started. What's a phrase that you would use to describe our relationship?
I think the phrase or even a word that I would come down to is equality. I really feel that in order to be an effective partner, you have to feel equal, because without equality, there's a level of fear and a level of reservation or a level of not feeling like you can share fully and say the things that you need to say and really describe things in a way that you need to describe them to really feel heard. And a lack of equality just takes away from that.
I love that. I didn't know where you were going to go. Just thinking of all of our past conversations on past relationships and how often the breakdown would come when you started to feel like maybe you were parenting the other partner and not feeling like equals, and how that disruption would lead to so many problems, whether it was acting out or feeling like almost the other person was parenting you. And I saw that come up in so many of the past relationships. And I know that's been a theme of many of our conversations.
Yeah, for me, it was really important to establish that right away, knowing how I didn't have it in the past and how I was responsible for it as well. It wasn't something that happened to me. It was something that I participated in because I didn't know how not to.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me and is something that I felt right from the beginning. The next question for you will be, one of our standards going forward for all Becoming as Messy guests. The theme of this show is embracing the messiness of life. Every becoming story has its own messy path. Walk us through some of the twists and turns that led you to the you that you are today.
I think somewhere in there has to become just my self discovery of learning the things that I could do on my own and learning how I could stand on my own 2 feet. I wouldn't say that the separation I had from my children's mother was messy in any way, but what was messy about it was my process of self discovery and going to therapy and reflecting everything that was wrong in the relationship or what I felt wasn't satisfying in the relationship back to myself. And that was hard to do on my own. And I don't think I would have been equipped to do that without being active, without starting to run and have this accomplishment on my own that I could just go and be responsible for. But as time went on, I realized the reliancy that I needed on friendship, especially male friendship, and getting close relationships, in recognizing that I needed the male opinion as well in having hard conversations with males and not just females. Because throughout my separation process, I had a lot of great women friends, but there was something about meeting and learning with other men and talking about discomfort, talking about pain, talking about hard things, and how that had a different spin on it than just with women.
That really reminds me of that moment in time where we did have a little bit of a disconnect in our relationship. And I was feeling a little bit of that imbalance of maybe having to carry a bit more of the emotional load than I was capable of. I had just gone through the loss of my grandfather. And as my primary father figure, I was there when he died and had never really experienced that deep level of grief. In the aftermath of that, really couldn't be that equal partner to you that I had typically played, and loved the conversation and openness to be able to just tap out a little bit in that moment and be honest with you that I couldn't be there for you going through your own kind of hardships at that time. And I'm curious, in a moment when we had a disconnect, what did that feel like on your end? And what was your approach to rallying and taking the load a little bit off my shoulders and taking it on yourself?
Yeah, at first there was a little level of hurt because you want certain types of support from your person. But I remember this conversation very distinctly where we're laying in bed and you expressing how you had nothing left to give as I was struggling with a role or a job that I was not happy in. Because of your honesty and openness about not being able to be there, for me, it just put me back in a place where I needed to go when I didn't have a person. What are the things that I need to fall back on for my own happiness? So again, for me, it was running, it was friendship, it was yoga, it was therapy, and not one more than the other as much as just revisit these things immediately and find a different groove, find a new level of just being happy on my own again and being able to have a place to address what was going on and manage my way through the role that I wasn't happy with and begin the search for another job. Being able to really put myself out there to make that happen, get through this. I don't know if I would call it woe is me, but when you're sad, and it was a jump start that I needed to revisit all those things to get me in a better place.
When you said the word equality, I feel like I'm now seeing kind of your responses through that lens and recognizing that when I think of the equality of how each of us are valued in this partnership, doesn't always look like equality in action. I feel like sometimes it might be you having to be a little bit more of a caregiver to me, sometimes it being me. We really have kind of a flexibility to our partnership to ebb and flow with whatever both of our needs are. I really value that.
Yeah, every problem isn't a nail, so every solution isn't a hammer. At different points and different times, we need different things. Sometimes that thing is space, and just giving you the ability to step away and address things on your own a little bit, or reflect, or whatever it may be. And so I provide space.
Yeah, I think following that lead as to when to lean in or when to provide space has been definitely a part of our secret sauce. Now, let's take a step back to our early days when, on one of our first dates, we flipped the script and didn't go with our best foot forward. You were courageous and instead showed up as your authentic self and went all in and sharing some of the skeletons in your closet. I'm curious of how you feel about that as the foundation of our beginning and the power that authenticity and transparency had.
I think it was crucial and vital. I remember sitting there at the bar and we were having this conversation. And really, for me, it was never wanting to have that feeling in my gut that a conversation was going to come up that I was either going to get uncomfortable with, or that it was going to lead to me sharing something that I thought wasn't the best thing about me. And that would ultimately scare, in this case, you away. I just didn't want to have that gut feeling anymore. And the only way for me to get through that was to just spill it and just share things that you're not comfortable sharing, living and knowing that this is me and it's either accepted or it's not. I remember in that moment when it was a very distinct fork in the road where I could have danced around the question that I got, or I could dive right in and specifically talk about it. I went with the dive right in, not knowing what was going to happen. But the miracle in it all is, as soon as I got done talking, you immediately turned around and shared your story that was similar, that we shared. And it was a very distinct beginning, I feel, for that next step in our relationship in creating that equality. Because I think really being new people courting each other, you don't have boundaries established, you don't have rules in place. And the rule that we established that night is that honesty and openness is the only way forward.
I remember that night vividly, and I think I did go into it with a little bit of best foot forward. I wasn't prepared or ready to be that vulnerable. I think the people pleaser in me wanted to follow my past scripts in getting you to like me and convincing you to like me. Hearing you open up set a different tone for me as somebody who has such a deep seated worry of abandonment and fear that people are going to find out the worst of me and hate me. It was so powerful to hear you be vulnerable and hear some of the mistakes and transgressions from your past and your story, how you've overcome them and learned from them and used them to propel you forward. It just set us up right from the start to not have any secrets, and a safe feeling in that there really was nothing I could say from my past that was going to scare you or push you away. I think it just set us on a level foundation right from the start. It was a springboard all these years later for so many good conversations. Before I met you, in previous relationships, I would lay up in bed at night with an upset stomach, feeling so worried about the things that I wasn't saying. I had so many words inside me that I never felt safe to verbalize. And since you and I have been together, I think that foundation that night has led to peaceful sleeping. I don't have that pit in my stomach feeling anymore because I don't have words that are left unsaid. That has been such a strength in our marriage.
I agree completely.
Now, thinking where we are today, how would you define a healthy relationship?
The word that comes to mind is simplicity. I think it's removing all of this negative talk or thoughts that everything has this overly complicated issue and a solution that needs all this extra attention to solve, when the simplicity of it all is just default to sharing, default to listening, default to asking questions. One of the most important ones is remembering intent. I think that was a big lesson that we had somewhere along this 10-year journey, in recognizing that just because somebody is showing up a certain way or does something or says something, that your intent was never to hurt, to harm, to make me feel any certain way. Just remembering that your intent is always just to love and support and be the best person you can be. Sometimes it just doesn't come out in the ways we think it is, or it's not received in the way we thought it would be. But that's okay, as long as you can get back and have the conversation of intent and understanding.
I always think of the word intent too. I think people would be surprised at how rarely we've said, I'm sorry, over our decade together. I could probably count them on my fingers, the times that either of us have, because we really are grounded in that intention. And we agree that one of us could have our feelings hurt by the other's actions, yet that doesn't mean the other person was wrong. Coming at it from that perspective when we do have disagreements has helped us get to a place where our communication is working on solving whatever the disconnect is, versus having to feel like you're right or wrong, or coming from a place of blame. That removes defensiveness. It just allows for a richer conversation to solution, because at the end of the day, we always want to get back to kind of peace for our relationship. And so really at the end of the day, we're not looking for validation on being right or wrong. We really just both want to get back on the same page. And that has been really powerful for our partnership.
In understanding intent, I think it's important that doesn't equate to silence.
Right.
The conversation still needs to be had, even if somebody's intent wasn't to hurt or whatever it may be. You have to have that conversation in order to, one, first validate that you feel a certain way about it and allow the other person to understand that feeling is okay, but then be able to open the conversation up to really what's going on here, and where was the disconnect, or how is it that we just talk about it and move on.
Our opinions and communication are both valid and welcome to come to the table to discuss, but our approaches and how we do that are often quite different. Share a little bit about how you approach those instances when your feelings have been hurt, or you feel slighted and you feel like you have an opinion to share. What's your approach to communication?
I'm an overthinker as well, but I do that in a very introverted way. One of the things that I never want to do is react in an overly negative way. And my only method, or the best method that I've found to work through that, is when I get to a certain level of frustration, or where there's something going on where I'm getting upset, is I have to step away. I have to create that space, allow myself to calm down, think about it, because when I want to say something about it, I want it to be very intentional. And I don't feel that I have the ability to be really intentional in those moments. So it's important for me to step away. And obviously, this is a lesson we've learned about each other. You recognizing that when I'm stepping away, it's not to avoid conflict. It's really for me to put my best foot forward in resolving the conflict. Normally, how I do that after I step away for a bit is either come back and have a conversation. Many times I've put it in an email, where me taking the time to write out the words, be very specific with what I'm saying in a way that describes how I feel about it and why. That's what I need, and I think what's helped us find our way to navigate through those times of frustration.
The power in what you just said is just having a curiosity and a willingness to understand the other person's style. This is something that we do in many aspects, communication being one of them. The book, The Five Love Languages, is one of our favorites, and we rely on that. It's helped guide us. I feel like we get off the hook a little bit because our two love languages happen to be the same. So I feel like that gives us a little bit of an easy button of understanding of how we like to show love and receive love. But communication in particular is one where we're so different. I think you need that time to process, where you'll see some of my triggers creep back up, where I can be very reactionary in the moment. I don't think I'm often, when triggered, so mean. There's no name calling or cursing at each other. But I do think sometimes when I speak off the cuff, I can be maybe a little bit harsher, meaner in the moment. I feel like you've just given me some space to not necessarily hold that against me. Do you feel like that is fair? Is that how it feels to you?
Yeah, in those moments, the words and the things that you're saying aren't normal, isn't the word, but they're not what would normally come up in a standard run of the mill disagreement that you're able to just solve and talk through when there's certain levels of escalation, either in your tone or how you're delivering your message. I recognize that there's really nothing that I can say in that moment to solve it. And this just takes me back to my customer service days of you have to address the emotion before you can address the problem. And there's so much emotion in those initial moments that I have to step back because nothing is going to get solved in that moment. And it also allows me to turn it back to myself. So once I do have the chance to write that email, most of what I'm writing is all about me. It's not what you have done or what you have said. It's my reflection upon myself in how I feel, why I feel that way, why I did something the way I did, whatever the circumstances are of the disagreement.
Early on, I talked a lot about how much I always felt like I need to be fixed, that I'm essentially broken and on this journey to fix myself, which really over time has shifted to accept that I'm not going to be able to fix myself, but instead focus on my healing, focus on how to continue to learn how to react a little bit more peacefully, working on my nervous system and therapy. I've taken all these steps. But in general, there are some things from my trauma background that do show up in our day to day. From your perspective, over our time together, what has that experience felt like to you?
Yeah, I've thought about this topic quite a bit since you've started your podcast and you've been on this journey. I don't know if I can think of a time when I ever looked at you or heard something from you or saw you react to something that I assigned that reaction to trauma. Obviously, knowing all the things about you that I do, basically everything, I know that the trauma has been there. But I think it's important and has been important for me to not almost think of it as this is coming from a place of trauma. This is just coming from a place of who you are. And you can't really separate the trauma from Megan, from anything else that's there. I think that's why communication has always been a big thing, and the ability to talk about the things openly and work through them. But yeah, I don't have some special radar that says, oh, this is coming from trauma or it's not. And so everything has just been, this is you. It's a package deal, and that's a part of it in there somewhere. Necessarily need to know what comes from where, but what I need to know is that does exist.
I love hearing that because that's really where I've landed for myself is I'm just me. So the me I am today was shaped by my entire background. There was so much love in my background. There was so many good people and great friendships mixed in with trauma. And I feel like I don't know exactly who I would have been without that backstory, but I can't change that. And I no longer feel like I have to. So I now embrace fully who I am in this moment. And I try to be as optimal as I can. But I do know that I have plenty of imperfections just like everybody else. I guess thinking simply as me as Megan, just curious, what are some of the hardest things of the experience of our marriage? I feel like we've talked about the positive, but what are some things that are hard?
I think of when we first started dating and how people that knew both of us, or as you're describing me to your friends, and them saying, oh my gosh, he runs marathons and he does Ironmans and you can't do those. And what does that mean? And how is that going to work? And he's going to be doing all these things and you're not there. And I think that in so many ways we are different because of the parts that there are trauma, because of the physical limitations that you've had to live with your whole life. Learning and finding ways to adapt with you on those has been really important to me. Recognizing even how to sometimes say those things, because I know there's been a number of times if I just happen to ask, are you going to take Luna for a walk, and how that may be translated from you as somebody who has had limitations or feels a certain way about your body on a certain day or any of those things, and getting a response that may not seem normal. I guess I hate to keep using that word. That's just what quickly comes to
Yeah,
mind.
yeah,
But
I get it.
in knowing that you're reacting or saying these things not because of what I was trying to do, but really for what you're trying to solve and reconcile and live with in your head with various types of struggles.
It's interesting, at least from my perspective, as somebody that's navigated trauma, there's this mix of a desire for me to never feel like a victim. So I want to own my role as your partner and really thinking of that equality feeling and striving for, again, putting forth all of the best behaviors I can. Yet I also recognize that some days my body just really hurts and I need a lot of extra sleep. Some days I'm going up and down the kind of spectrum with my nervous system. I do know that all of us, we all have a mix of things that have contributed to who we are today that lead to have bad days. But I feel like there's a little bit of a guilt to me having those because I feel a little bit less than, I think, when those happen.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, that's where I do get a little bit triggered or something. I feel like if you're asking questions about me laying around doing nothing and all of a sudden wanting to know if I'm going to take Luna for a walk, it feels a little bit like I'm being judged in that, even if it isn't your intent. We've navigated that and talked about that. And again, I think communication has been such a big part of addressing and working through that. So you don't have to walk on eggshells and I don't have to feel triggered or upset anytime you ask me something that feels like it's coming at me in judgment. But it's definitely been a process. Even since we've been together, I've experienced quite a bit of trauma. I talk a lot about it being my backstory, but it's also been a part of our present, whether that be a mix of surgeries, my loss of dead ed, or finding out that my biological dad isn't the dad who raised me. In the midst of those kind of experiences, just curious as a partner during those times, what that experience for you has been like.
Really, for me, I feel that I always take cues from you. I don't want to add to the situation, and so I don't want to bring something of my own to what you're experiencing that could make it even more difficult or more convoluted or really just pile on to something that's already very difficult. And I think an easy early example of that was when you had your hip replaced. And I see you smiling. I'm not going with that story, but when you had your hip replaced, this is a major surgery. And to me, I was like, holy shit, this is a big deal. Knowing what they're going to do and how they're going to do it and the tools they use to do such a procedure. And so I had fear about it. But because you've spent so much time in hospitals and because you've had so many surgeries, you will tell everybody and have always described to me that you have a comfort with hospitals and a comfort going through the process of it. And I really just took that from you. I wasn't going to be panicked outwardly. I wasn't going to be worried outwardly. I was just going to take your lead in your comfort with it, in you knowing that this is what needs to happen and I'm okay with it and it'll go the way the rest of them have gone and that you'll be better once it's all done. That was a early important lesson because that was right as we joined our families together in this house that we're in. Really just listening to you and getting a feel for how you feel about it. I think that was an easy example. I think the harder one has been probably your grandfather passing away. And when somebody's in so much grief and pain, it's easy to be overbearing. It's easy to really not know what to do. But in that one, the cues that I got from you were really in needing time with your family, in needing time to be out there as he passed away and be a part of that. And then afterwards was being there to listen to the stories and how important that was for you to go out there and be with your family and be there as a caregiver for Dead Ed, who was somebody who was such a big caregiver for you. I just try to be in tune with those cues that you're giving to let you do what you need to do and not impede it in any way or add anything to it in any way.
Oh, that's so beautiful, baby. I feel like that's how it feels to receive your support. When I lost Dead Ed, being there with him as he passed, and then in those days that followed, it was a feeling that I had never experienced before. From my perspective, was one of those where I almost needed isolation and space. Had little fleeting thoughts of worry, of not maybe receiving your willingness to help yet. But in those moments that you recognize that I just needed to be with my brothers, and in that space, being willing to do that. And then instead shifting your attention and doing all that you could to help the kids and really remove any other load off of my shoulders and helping in the ways that you could. And then eventually us coming together to have a space together to be able to do that. Looking back, I don't know what my healing journey would have looked like without you. I feel like when I met you, I had just finished my own imperfect level up and I was in a strong place. Over the last 10 years, that healing journey has still gone on, and I'm constantly growing, learning, and trying to do better. Just having a safe space to navigate that with you by my side has been so powerful. There's listeners that may be in your position, maybe folks in a new relationship, and one person having a chronic trauma background and the other person navigating that kind of beginning stages of showing up for that person. Do you have any advice that you could give to folks that are just beginning the journey that you've lived for the last 10 years as my partner?
I think the best advice I can give is to ask more questions than talk, to be a good listener, to understand and try and help you recognize what is the dynamic of this person, who are they and why. If you have that true intent of listening to learn and not listening to speak, that will help you be better positioned to identify different things that you may see or that may be going on. I think empathy is a huge thing. but it's an interesting balance because I can't say that I've ever felt sorry for you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that's in a way taking your power away from what you've done and what you're able to do on your own. And so it's not sympathy, it's not sadness. It's truly just recognizing that this is you.
Shifting gears to your own messy journey, I always say that you have insane mental strength. I brag about you to others, whether it's your endurance races or how you handle life's challenges. You've heard before, one of my favorites was when you qualified for the Boston Marathon, and because of COVID, that race was canceled. You decided to run a full marathon in our tiny backyard, which blew me away. I'm just curious where you think that mental strength comes from.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me because I think of you and your mental strength and what you've learned throughout all of these traumatic experiences that you've been through. I almost feel somewhat of the opposite, where I feel my mental strength comes from me choosing to do difficult things. Not to say that choosing to go through a divorce isn't easy, because it certainly wasn't. But physically, I feel the challenges that I've put on myself and having the confidence to know that I can do it, I think it gives me patience. I feel I'm a very patient person, and you have to be if you're choosing to do an Ironman or run a marathon or run 50 miles or something else that seems pretty silly. But it takes time, and having that time by yourself to think and reflect, I feel prepares me for just about anything. I say that about work a lot, where I can go and handle anything at work because over the weekend I went and did a ridiculously long run or something like that. So I feel it's the hard things that I've chosen to do, sprinkled in with a little bit of hard things that I had to move through.
Speaking of hard things you've chosen to do, one of the most inspirational things to me has been your work as a guide in the athletic community. Side note, it was also critical, I feel, and really serendipitous to me, because physical activity has always been one of the kind of limitations I've put on myself because of my body's limitations. And to fall in love with you, who volunteer your time and body to help enable persons that have disabilities that would make running a marathon or doing an Ironman not possible. Seeing those athletes who have had a willingness to still get out there and do those things, even in spite of their limitations, made me feel like calling bullshit on my own excuses. That was really powerful. What was your original backstory and inspiration in you choosing to show up in that way?
In my endurance journey, there's a very distinct fork in the road. I was just simply asked. I was working part time at a running store. A woman came in, Kim Verden, and she asked if I had ever been a guide for a blind athlete. It was a very simple question, but in that moment, I had this rush of thoughts and emotions to really understand what that question meant. To me, it meant that there was somebody who wanted to run, somebody that wanted to train, wanted to do a race, but without having somebody prearranged ahead of time to be out there with them, they couldn't do it. In those very brief moments, I then thought of all the times when I woke up and it was raining, or it was cold, or it was windy, or I had all these excuses to just stay inside and not go for a run myself. And it was the best thing I ever did to say yes. working with blind athletes or differently abled athletes has been a huge impact on, I think, everything that I do. I feel that has translated to us as well because in many ways we're all differently abled in understanding all the things that you've gone through. You're equipped differently to handle different things. Having an openness and acceptance to really learn throughout that process, whether it's been with blind athletes or even with you as a partner, I think that's been huge in recognizing the differences.
It's been neat to, one, challenge my own beliefs on my limitations because of the athletes that you've worked with and seeing all that they challenge themselves to do. But I think also bringing perspective of you as a guide to the times when we do physical activity together. I think of the one physical activity that I actually love. There's not many, but I do love to hike. And we've done some incredible hikes together. Thinking of moments when without you, it might not be possible for me. There's certainly plenty of hikes I can do alone, and I have done alone, but there certainly have been ones that we've done together where I've needed you as a partner and a guide in that moment, whether that was your help actually getting to climb over your body as we were shimmying over a big canyon, or times when the steepness of the hill needed your support. It's just really cool to think of your experience as a guide and how that contributes to you as a partner.
For whatever reason and whatever my experiences have been, are just ingrained in me to want people to be able to experience things that fortunately for my whole life I've been able to do. To think that could be taken away, or that because of somebody's limitations, whatever they may be, however they are different, that they can't do it, that breaks my heart. I want that for you, knowing how much you love taking those hikes and love seeing amazing places. And for whatever reason, it's second nature for me to get in and get my hands dirty in any way so that you can participate in that, or a blind athlete or a young autistic man or whoever it may be, because to me it just makes sense and I don't know why.
What's been your favorite hike together so far?
It would have to be in Moab. Going out to I can't think of the arch's name, but the
Yeah,
big
yeah.
famous arch,
Yeah,
that one was
yeah.
great. But then
Yeah, yeah.
obviously the one that takes the cake is the cavern, or
Yes.
the
What was it?
devil's cauldron, or the
Yes. Oh, I feel like
whatever
you're
it is that we had to
close.
get a special pass to go and do.
Yes. Oh,
And
that was so
it
cool.
was like the maze, and navigating our way through and up and over rocks, and shimmying through tight spaces, and having to sprawl with your feet on one rock, pushing against your hands on another. And all of that was great. And I love being able to, one, do those things with you. That's the simplicity of it. But then also when it's done, seeing your reaction and you feeling proud of yourself for doing it. And to me, that's always the payoff, is seeing somebody just be able to recognize their potential.
That one I almost quit. So I feel like with
I
your,
know,
yes,
I know.
yes. But I did it. I did get through with your help. I was able to accomplish that. So appreciate that final nudge, because finishing that one and getting out to the parking lot was such an incredible feeling.
Man, that was a great one.
Yeah. So shifting, thinking about your own growth journey. We talk so much, especially the first episodes we've done so far in Becoming is Messy has been so much of a focus on my growth. Curious of your own growth story and evolution. I've certainly seen you evolve since we've been married, but just thinking of a younger Kelly and wondering what some of the perspective younger Kelly would have of the you that you are today.
I think the younger Kelly would have thought that I'm pretty boring.
Yeah.
Now I really focus on simplicity. I joke with people and say, I like to keep it simple because I'm not very smart. And that, I guess that's just a joking way of saying that I feel that the hardest things really don't have to be hard if you make them simple. And I feel that when I was younger, it was very much about people pleasing and being popular and thinking you had to be all of these things. A big part of my journey was just recognizing that me as a person and being who I am is enough, and not trying to put on an extroverted show that never felt comfortable to me, thinking that's what popular meant or had to be. And instead, really recognizing the small moments one to one that I've come to love.
Younger you might think you're boring, but younger you would also think that you're a great dad. Raising our three kids together, now teenagers, so soon they're going to be off to college one at a time, with Mason going to Boston this August.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, what do you think are some of the things we've gotten right on our co-parenting journey?
I think having some understanding and freedom to allow each other to do what we felt we needed to do with our own children. There's always been alignment. So if I, for the most part, have chosen to parent or something in a given way, you have supported that. But I feel the conversations that come after the moments when maybe something wasn't handled in a way that we thought may have been a better way to handle it, those conversations and recaps afterwards, I think, have been very powerful for us to understand what it's like to not be that parent, but to be that bonus parent. And how can you support the direct parent in any way possible, just to help them see and navigate things in a little bit different way. I know we each have the way that we think about things, and that's our default. And it's not that it's right or wrong with any of the children, but getting that perspective from the other side, I think, has been really valuable with the kids. Being able to offer us a little bit something different that we can give to the kids based on the recommendation or conversation or feedback or whatever it may be.
Is there anything now, as you look back, that as a bonus parent has been surprising, that maybe you wish somebody would have prepared you for?
Not really. I feel the secret to being a bonus parent is really you start out just trying to be like the fun uncle a little bit, where you're there, you're not trying to necessarily drive or influence things, you're really participating. It's important to continue to show up and participate as much as possible, because then that's where I feel the magic can begin to happen, and where then you start to be invited or start to be asked. I was certainly never going to pressure Mara into spending time with me or really anything. And it's just been a process of hearing her and being around, and then seeing what I get invited to participate in. That's probably a practice of patience, and not necessarily a practice of trying to make it something.
When you talk about getting to that point of being invited, I think that for me, it was a little bit of a surprising learn it as we go thing, because I think at first I did put up some boundaries just out of respect for you and the children and your children's mother. At first, I feel like coming in as maybe the fun aunt and defaulting to you and Sarah to navigate kind of the specifics of Emmy and Mason's day to day needs. But over time, when they would start coming to me, it took me a little while to find the right balance, to recognize that there are certain topics that maybe feel a little safer to them coming to the bonus parent versus going to mom or dad. Increasing my own comfort to navigate and not feel like I was always maybe stepping on your and Sarah's toes, but instead really following the child's need.
Mm-hmm.
And then also times when they confided in me. recognizing, hey, they chose me for a reason for this, to be able to confide. And unless there was something that was very worrying, there really wasn't always a need to tell you guys. And
Mhm.
I think that for me, that was a little bit of a journey figuring out, but it was really important eventually to give them a space with me that was trusting too and honoring who they chose to come to.
Yeah, it's just establishing that relationship as you would with anybody new and finding out where can that exist, where does it not exist, and being okay with it and really accepting and wanting to participate in as much as they will allow it.
Co-parenting is definitely one of those things that continues to keep us on our toes. But there are a few other things happening for our home team that are keeping things a little extra interesting these days. I came to you just a few months ago. Work had been rough for me for the last few years. And even though we had always talked about launching our own businesses as an early retirement, minimum 5 years from now, the timing of the universe started nudging me a little bit sooner. I came to you and laid out that I was feeling ready to ditch the security of a corporate paycheck and take the leap to starting my own business with all the risk and uncertainty that entails. You were super supportive. Why do you think that is? Where did your willingness to support such a big leap for our family come from?
I feel it came from your ability to articulate and talk about it. Take your vision and share it openly. Share the things that you weren't sure about, share the things that you were confident about, and really just accepting all the questions that I had, not taking those questions as doubt or as me trying to influence that this is a bad idea or it's not going to work. That worked out perfectly, I feel, because it was really my intent, knowing that if I gave you good questions to think about, it was really just going to help you try to clarify or identify things that you still knew were gaps, or find these corners that it's okay, I don't have that solution yet, but I feel as I answer and take care of these other things, that will come. And again, just the ability of conversation and openness and no judgment. I feel I really wanted to come and just inquire and ask you questions to just best help me also understand what it is that you're really looking to do. And then there was also the what I referred to earlier in taking your lead a little bit or following your lead a little bit with just your comfort and confidence as that grew throughout the process and in the months of planning and months of strategizing and starting to get clarity on what it was. So for me, support probably felt a lot like you just explaining to me as best you can what it is you envision.
Now that we are officially in the messy middle of owning this business and getting it started and newly launching the podcast and just beginning really to get the word out about it. Curious of your thoughts now, whether that's what's maybe worrisome, as well as what are some of the things that you're looking forward to or excited to see unfold?
The worrisome thing is obviously it's money. Obviously, compensation and corporate
Yeah.
compensation goes a long way versus no compensation and starting from scratch. One of the things that I've learned from you that I've had to take some belief in it because of the amount of times that you've told it in stories and the different times that it's happened is just your belief in your strength in knowing that things are going to be okay. And I've had to jump all in with that as well. If I start casting doubt in the questions that I have or showing frustration that money isn't coming in and what are we going to do and have this panic, that's really not going to allow this whole process and the whole creation of becoming as messy to really be what it can. It needs that space. You need that space to explore and learn and build and adjust. And a lot of it is relinquishing control of it. It's your baby. You control what's happening. And I'm really here to participate and support any way that I can to try to make it successful.
This example is such a cool one to demonstrate another thing that I think is our partnership secret sauce. And that is both of us trusting in the other's intuition and gut feels for their own life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't walk your shoes day to day. And so for me to try to control and tell you how to best live your life is going to fall flat and it's going to limit you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the way you've enabled me to just go day by day following what I know in my gut is my next step, and simply just supporting that is really incredible and has led us both to continue to be the best versions of ourselves and continue to grow into better versions of ourselves. For anybody listening, if you're looking for a way to really thrive in a partnership, to me, that's one of the simplest yet profound ways that you can do that.
Until now, I hadn't thought of it in this context. You coming and saying that this is going to be your path forward and me supporting it and getting behind it as best and as much as I can, it's no different than over a year ago when I came to you and said, oh, hey, by the way, I'm going to sign up and do a half Ironman on Saturday, and then the next day, Sunday, do a full Ironman. And you saying, okay, sounds great. And just getting that simple vote of confidence and not these questions and concerns and how are you going to do that and it's not going to work and all this time. That isn't how you approached it from your side, and just the ease and the ability that then it gave me to move forward and do the things that I needed to do to make it happen.
Totally. We don't always really understand the why of the other person, right? I think we both come to each other with my gut telling me I need to do this. Sometimes I don't even know if it totally makes sense, but I just know what my gut is telling me. And I feel like you do the same to me. And we don't always understand it or can make sense of it. And it's not always something maybe we would do for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we know how powerful both of our conviction is with following what we know is best for ourselves. And that's been really cool. This was so much fun. We're at the last question. At this very moment, so many people are feeling like they are in their very own rock bottom. While in the midst of your own messiest moments of your becoming, what advice do you wish would have arrived?
I think it probably would have been something fairly easy and simple. Find your actions and start taking them and believing them. I feel that we all have the ability to find ways to help us move forward. If you've never had to do that, you probably don't know what that looks like. You probably don't know what the actions are to take. So there's some experiment in there. Having enough want to start doing better or start to get to a different place enough that you're willing to take actions that you've never taken before.
Kelly, I'm so glad you joined us to be our very first guest on Becoming is Messy. This was so much fun. Your unwavering support, your quiet strength, and the way you show up, not just for me, but for our family, your friends, and the people you guide are nothing short of incredible. Your advice to believe in yourself and let that belief fuel action is something I hope every listener takes to heart. Because if there's one thing I've learned from you, it's that confidence isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting yourself enough to take the next step, no matter how messy the path may be. Thank you for being here, for being you, and for still being my person after all that life's thrown our way. I love you.
I love you too.
Before we wrap today, I want to invite you to be part of the Becoming is Messy community. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And if there's anything that resonates with you, please leave a review. Your feedback means the world to me, and it helps other people find this community. Follow me on social media. I'd love to hear your ideas for future topics, your questions, and stories from your own messy moments. And if you're feeling inspired, check out the Becoming is Messy shop, where you can grab a mug, a t-shirt, or something else that reminds you to embrace your messy magic every single day. A huge thank you to the incredible Wolves and Sheep for providing the music for Becoming is Messy. Check them out on your favorite music streaming platform. As we close out today's episode, remember this: messy is just another word for growing. So keep showing up, keep laughing, and keep making beautifully awkward progress. Until next time, stay messy, my friends.